Greetings and welcome to the Voices Research podcast show with Dr. PMAC, a show where I bring in ordinary people that are doing extraordinary things in community and around the world. Today, I'm joined by Rolf Foster-Jorgensen, who is the owner of Optimire Consulting and Training, specializing in corporate leadership and team coaching, consultative skill facilitation, as well as he's just published a book called Risk-Giving Leadership. Rolf has provided discrete, behind-the-scenes, face-to-face, and online instructional design and coaching, primarily working with Fortune 500 companies such as IBM and Cisco and GM and Chrysler and Ford, among many other companies. He and his business partner wife have owned multi-million-dollar businesses, working with various folks. He is a singer and performs timpani and percussion with Canada's oldest fire department concert band from his oceanfront, Nova Scotia home. So join me today as I speak with Rolf. So, as I was saying to you earlier on, like I've introduced you to my listeners, and I'm sure this is going to be a, very interesting conversation for both sort of a leadership perspective, but also just getting to learn from you, right? The practice, the journey that you've walked in your career over a number of years, over a number of decades. And so, first of all,
I'm honored to be here. Thank you.
Thanks. So we'll get started. I think one of the things that got me into, I want to invite Rolf for a conversation was your latest book, the book that you've put out. And as I was reading it, I was like, wow, I want so many, right? Just giving leadership. Like I want so many listeners and I want so many people out there to benefit from the wisdom that you've put out into the world. Of course, the books are available for purchase, and we'll speak a little bit about that later. But what's the story behind the term risk-giving leadership? How did you land on that specific framing versus risk-taking, right? So I'm an entrepreneur and I'm always thinking about the risks that I take and then risk-giving leadership.
Well, it's interesting because I actually came up with the term back in the 1980s, long time ago.
Wow.
And it really has to do with the idea of it's a process to basically consistently create and share and build a safe enough space that people feel comfortable taking risk.
Yeah.
And so in that sense, it's the environment in which we do take risk. However, the idea is if we don't give that sense of environment to other people, they're not as comfortable taking risks themselves. So we want to have a collective aspect of sharing and encouraging and building and basically giving us all a chance collaboratively to feel that the risk is not too burdensome.
Okay. And then people, as you consult, as you work with, organizations, and I've introduced you to my listeners as someone who's worked with multiple Fortune 500 companies. Yeah. Have you seen that there are certain personalities or there are certain people that are more attuned to that risk-giving or risk-taking? Well, let me say risk-giving using are there people that are attuned to that and people that are risk-averse? Like, you know what, I'm not going to be part of this decision-making. You go ahead and I'll go with the flow.
Well, it isn't really a major distinction to make. I mean, yes, there are many people I work with who are comfortable with the risk-giving approach. The idea, though, is I don't try to drill that in as being a necessity. It's really dealing with how do we come up with an environment in which people are comfortable enough to share, to work, to learn with each other, of which risk-giving is just a particular term I've come up with to differentiate that. At the same time, though, I think one of the key things that has come out through my research with these companies is that what I call the traditional role of basically management, supervising people, has almost become obsolete. It isn't working the way it used to work. People aren't responding to authority and position, respect to positional power, et cetera. So they're having to come up with different ways to do things. So what I came up with basically was a particular framework, and it's kind of a bell-shaped curve of behaviors and skills and talents and stuff. And it measures, and in effect, what it comes down to is I'm saying to the managers, free yourself up from the middle of the bell-shaped curve. Let peers manage each other and help each other. You work on the edges, work on the growth, work on the people that are challenging, and use HR departments selectively rather than trying to micromanage everybody in the middle of the bell-shaped curve. Well, that's what's being well received.
Well, that's interesting then, Rolf. A question that I would immediately have for you then is that as you mentioned that, like, leaders and management teams are having to devise ways to work with their teams, right? People are no longer responding to power hierarchies and all of these
Right.
things. And so how then do you distinguish between giving someone a risk, an opportunity to take a risk versus setting them up to fail? How do I then say, oh, my manager is giving me an opportunity? Or how do I not see that as, they want me to fail and then write up a bad, job review?
Yeah, I mean, my book focuses on the idea of how to help equipping employees to transform their toxic workplaces. I don't try to define their toxic workplace for them. Let them do that. They
Okay.
already have it, and it varies greatly from person to person and situation to situation. The key here, though, is that you don't have to feel like you have to take on everything at once, much less take on the biggest bully.
Okay.
So by using a finesse mentoring, peer-to-peer mentoring technique I came up with, it
Mhm.
allows us to, in effect, shove the toxicity out of the environment by having a broader base, a critical mass of people who are supporting each other. So as far as the managers go, I've divided the motivational aspects into 7 different categories so they can fine-tune the type of mentoring and they can fine-tune the type of guidance they give.
Okay.
And what the managers love, what they tell me they love, is it frees them up to work with the most innovative people, the ones who really want to grow the company, the organization, wherever they're in. And
Mhm.
that's reassuring and gratifying to them too. They're not so bogged down in the old fashioned ways of managing.
Interesting. So let's take a little bit of a step back. You and your business partner, who have, your wife, who have managed to meet and we work together in other platforms, have managed and owned multi-million dollar businesses. Let's go back to your own career, right? Who
Okay.
gave you opportunities to take risks, and how did
Well,
that affect your leadership?
yeah, well, actually, it started shortly getting out of college, and then I was able to be hired with the Junior Achievement Organization, which is a business
Okay.
education program.
Mhm.
And I was honored. I rose up quickly to be the youngest staff president in the United States, actually in the world at the time. So I was
Okay.
running the Philadelphia operation, which is a pretty large operation at age 28, and I expanded it a lot. And what I discovered there is my board of directors, who were basically CEOs and presidents of Fortune 500 companies, because that's what was available there, and I recruited them, and we had a better board than the Chamber of Commerce and others.
Oh wow.
I
Yeah.
learned these board members are really no different than anybody else.
Mm.
They put their pants on the same way. All you have to do is you have to prepare, anticipate what their needs are, and present it in a succinct manner that lets them realize that you've got things under control and doing well. The
Mhm.
difference is what I learned over the years of working with them is it's no longer about control.
Okay.
It's about risk giving an environment that everybody has a chance to grow. I used to think in my younger days that I had to be in control.
Mm.
And yes, that impressed some of them to get me started. But over time, I realized that's the change in risk giving that occurred over 40 years.
Wow. And so if you look at that, of the 40 years, if you could go back and give yourself, your younger self, more perhaps in one area, what would that be?
One of them would barely be to be a little less results oriented. I was,
Say.
I've been coaching people for 40 years, of which the last 13 or so, I've been a certified high performance coach, one of the first ones in the world.
Mm.
And what I liked about the difference of the high performance coaching that I'm certified in is that we guide people up to the level of options and
Okay.
then back off a little bit. Whereas
Yeah.
I used to hard drive people, how are you doing? Why did you make
Mhm.
accomplish thing that you said you were going to do? And
Yeah.
pretty
Yeah.
soon it was too convenient for them to blame the coach rather than take personal accountability.
Okay.
So by guiding people up to where I draw options out of them. And sometimes I actually say to them, you're forgetting a key option. You can
Mm.
do nothing. And they
Okay.
always respond to that. I said, no, I want to do something. Well,
Yeah.
now they've just made a commitment. However, I've just reminded them that the whole range is available to them.
Hmm. So you just say something that just sort of put my thoughts on hold, on pause. You say that you stop being results oriented. So how has that translated? How is the risk giving approach translated now to the Fortune 500 and the clients that you work with and you work for? Because I'll sit here as an entrepreneur. I'm like, well, I want results. I want to see what the
Oh,
bottom
yeah.
line. So how is that translated?
Well, it actually produces better results because
Okay.
you've got a broader base of people committed to doing it rather than trying to micromanage and lead people who
Mhm.
don't want to comply. You may get compliance, but you won't get buy-in. That's a
Okay.
big difference. So the
Okay.
risk giving environment basically broadens the base of support. You've got much more collaborative efforts moving things forward. So more results can be accomplished. It's not that I'm not results oriented. I
Mhm.
realized the approach I was using in my coaching was so results oriented that it was pushing people away. So
Okay.
instead, I'm much more engaging, much more collaborative now. And again, I've been doing stand-up training for 40 years and all over the world. In that sense, I learned different cultures as well, and I realized that I didn't have to be so pushy.
Yeah. Oh wow. So I mean, not being pushy. Who then benefits from risk giving leadership, right? You were talking about results here. So who benefits from actually taking this approach?
Well, the key people who benefit primarily, I would say, are the mid-level people, many of whom are not managers,
Okay.
who are feeling that sense of pressure, that sense of a toxic environment, however they choose to define it. They're the ones that I'm finally reaching out to because I've been dealing with high-level executives for so many
Yeah.
years, and
Yeah.
I've seen these middle-level people struggle. And
Mm-hmm.
that's the impetus behind the book and how the work I'm doing now and the courses I have to support it and
Yeah.
in the community I'm building around it. It's realizing that you don't have to have a top level leadership position to still be a leader.
Mm-hmm.
You don't even have to have a title to be a leader.
Yeah.
However, understanding how to finesse, mentor each other, and coach each other and support each other is what makes the collective results accomplish.
Accomplished. Okay, that makes sense. So again, I'm trying to dig in and understand some of the leadership practices that are out there.
Sure.
What's been one big mistake or two perhaps that you've seen leaders make?
Oh, I think the biggest mistake that the big corporate leaders make is they are so short-sighted regarding quarterly results for their stockholders.
Yeah.
So what happens is they'll come up with a great idea, and I've coached them through these ideas,
Mm-hmm.
and a month later, in their mind, it's like it's already implemented. And we're just barely starting to roll it out within the organization, yet they're expecting the results to already be there, and therefore both their expectations need to be adjusted as well as their patience.
Mm-hmm.
Give these good ideas a chance to develop before you measure them, but before you evaluate the measurements that are available to you.
Yeah.
And some of them their mind is on the next objective rather than letting one play out. That's a key part of their shortcoming, in my opinion.
Well,
And it's pressured from the stock market, basically.
Yeah. No. It's interesting, right? I was reading something over the weekend about just Google, and I think it's Sundar Pichai, who's the CEO there, just talking about the return of Sergey Brin, who's one of the co-founders of Google, and he was just reflecting and saying, hey, you know what, his return has allowed me now to focus on other things, and Sergey is busy coding and doing all of these things. Now, and in thinking about that approach, how do leaders practice what they preach, right? When it comes to sort of risk giving, and again, you mentioned one of the people that leaders. How do you coach them? How do you make sure that at least they're practicing what they're preaching? If I, as a CEO, I'm telling my leadership team or my management team, hey, let's take this risk giving approach. Let's just make sure that our teams are able to. How do I model that?
I think the most challenging habit some of them have to break, and they do eventually realize the benefit of doing so, is letting people learn from their mistakes. Okay. Realizing that we don't have to clamp down on everything that goes wrong. And this is where the peer-to-peer mentoring comes in, because in a way, employees are much more comfortable talking to their peers than they are to their boss or manager. So therefore, they open up more and they say, here's where the problem is. Here's what we could improve upon. They're more willing to do that than take the risk in the old-fashioned approach of trying to go upward with their complaints.
I hear you, Rolf. Sorry for jumping in. I hear you, but that also comes with a cost, right?
Well,
like giving someone the ability to make risks comes with a cost. So is there such a thing as too much risk giving?
Oh, sure. In fact, my bell-shaped curve, actually, the framework I use within the book talks about what's outside of the range that's tolerable for your particular environment. And it could vary from company to company. So yes, it's not a carte blanche, do anything you want. It's the idea that what can we learn? How can we step back from whatever happens and say, what can we learn from this before we start pinning blame and hopefully never get to the point of blame? Sure. The idea is that every opportunity is a learning, every situation is a learning opportunity. And if we say, what can we delve from this? And yes, you might have to make some mitigating steps. You might have to change team arrangement. You might have to support each other differently. I've got a team dimensions profile that a colleague and friend of mine, Al Fadden, has developed that I built into the book as well, that allows the right people to get involved with the right step in projects so that they're not getting burned out. They're not getting so burned by poor decisions.
Sure. I love hearing that. And so a lot of my listeners, in many ways, some of them have started small businesses, some of them are working for mid-sized companies, and they'll be listening like, yeah, well, you know what, maybe we should switch this off on because Rolf is talking about, Fortune 500s, and this is and it's been experienced. So my question then on their behalf. How do you balance risk giving with organizational constraints, compliance, or stakeholders who want certainty, right? They want to know that this is going to happen in this way. So for a small business owner, how do I even balance risk giving with the subcontractors or the contractors that I'm working with? Where do I do that balance? Yeah.
Sure. And I think the key thing is step back and learn a little different approach. And that is to ask those same small business people,
Yeah.
how much of their stress are they bringing home? How is it affecting their family? How are their friends around them responding to them if all they talk about is the strain and the stress of their jobs?
Sure.
And if you can help them realize that, no, you can have a collaborative network even of people that don't work for you directly.
Mm-hmm.
And it's what I call the three ranges of managing. One is to roll up your sleeves, get it done. The second is to delegate to those that you're available to. And the third is to facilitate getting it done. And you can facilitate something getting done from a broad range of resources that you don't control.
Yeah.
And that's a key part of the finesse involved with risk giving for any size organization.
Interesting. So facilitate is a key word. So here's me asking a question on behalf of someone. I'm not going to name any names. So how then do you handle it? How do you coach a leader who is giving someone a risk and they actually fail? What comes next?
Well, again, it's that same idea that what have we learned from this? What could we do differently? Is it necessary? I mean, it's an old adage, but it's the one that how come we didn't have time to do it right the first time when we all of a sudden we have to do it over?
Okay.
And where the punishment has come in traditionally is that when somebody's made a mistake, they've taken it from them and given it to somebody else to do it. Therefore, they had embarrassment along with failure.
Mm-hmm.
And what we're saying now is, no, what can you bolster? What can you reinforce the team so that, yes, the mistake doesn't happen again or it doesn't get as serious. However, still keep the person involved. Let them grow from this. Help them have the mentoring and the support, realizing that, okay, this wasn't a failure. It was simply a step in my learning.
So in essence, it's really just creating this safety net for colleagues, for teams to be able to know, hey, there's learning in failing, right?
There's learning failure.
Mm-hmm.
And I always caution a little bit about using the word safety. I mean, people talk about safe spaces, this kind of stuff, and I'm not opposed to those trying to promote that. The point I want to make, though, is that if you're truly guiding an organization of any size, small business, large, doesn't matter, toward innovation, you're not playing it safe anymore.
Okay, yeah.
You're not playing it safe. So the key is, how do you mitigate, how you do anticipate proactively the types of concerns that could happen and learn from the mistakes so that they don't happen again, and grow and expand and take a different type of risk, but still take risks.
Okay. Yeah, I mean that's understandable. That's fair. My notion of safety wasn't so much from the risk perspective. My notion of safety was so much from personal, emotional, mental safety, if I may just sort of bring all of those together, right? Because it's one thing to take in a risk on behalf of the business. The business is a $500 million company, or we've got a $50,000 budget, and so whatever, right? I'm safe in the confines of that. But then my leader then comes back and say, look, Patrick, you've just cost us 300,000. You've just cost us. And then that takes a toll, not just for my work output or how I'm for work, but obviously mentally, right? I'll take a little bit of a knock. They say, oh my gosh, I just cost the company $500,000, right? And so this is just the sense of perhaps psychological safety is what I should have said, right? Say, how do leaders also, put that in place just to ensure that no one goes home with, their tail between their legs saying, oh my gosh, I failed, I suck at this, I can't do anything.
Right.
But how do you support leaders? How do leaders provide that psychological safety?
Yeah, part of it comes down to the idea of how do you handle success? In other words, when a project goes well and people accomplish something, do you share that type of gain, saying, hey, you helped us just make $20 million, you helped us make $50,000, so that when something goes wrong and maybe there's a proportionally less, maybe a $50,000 gain and a $5,000 loss, you're able to put it in perspective. So yeah, we had to step back a little and absorb that. However, what can we learn from that to make sure that the next $50,000 or $100,000 accomplishment is easier to accomplish together? And I think that's different. It's that balanced approach of not punishing and leaping on failure. It's reinforcing what's worked so that we can absorb occasional failures.
Wow. Thanks for that. I'll come to your book again in a minute, but I wanted to focus on you and your career and as a leader. Can you share with me and then the audience and the listeners here, what kind of risks are you currently giving yourself?
Well, um, I've been blessed in that I've got almost a 50-year marriage with my
Yeah,
wife and
yeah,
business partner both. And then that itself, people consider a major risk to actually run businesses together.
yeah.
We've done that for years, love it, and
Wow.
get along. We're each other's sounding board, which is great.
Yeah.
So I value that.
Mhm.
So what other people consider to be risks, I don't.
Wow.
We've
Okay.
we built a house on the ocean.
Yeah,
Okay, some people talk about, oh, rising sea levels, you're going to be wiped out. No, we've taken precautions. We're cautious enough, sensible enough. However, it's something we wanted to do and we're willing to take that risk.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So however you define risk of one person, it's got going to be the same for somebody else.
Mm,
You know,
mm,
it's subtlety. It's that type of thing. So for me, yes, my risk, quite honestly, is the fact, and I'll be honest with you, a
yeah.
lot of my business contacts of these big companies have
Mm,
retired or in some cases died. And
mm,
that's so I'm developing new contacts at different ages, not all of whom respect somebody my age.
yeah,
And at the same time, by this book approaching the middle level people,
yeah,
many of whom don't have titles, they're not in leadership, quote unquote, leadership positions yet.
yeah.
However, I'm showing them how they can be leaders even in whatever role they're at. That's a new
Mm,
audience for me. That's a risk.
yeah, 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 yeah. So it's a new. I mean, it's a new audience. You talk about that. I think about even the generations that are coming into the workplace now.
Yeah.
Even a person as young as I am is
Yeah.
considered old school, right? I'm
That's
like,
true. Well,
what?
I don't know if you did, I don't know if you just, I don't know how relevant this is by the time you air this, but the CEO of McDonald's
Yeah,
just came out
yeah,
saying that people take responsibility for your own career. Don't wait for somebody else to open doors for you. Yes, it's nice if it happens. However, if you're depending upon that, you've created a codependency that is more
yeah.
harmful to your mental health as well as your career.
That's true. Yeah, that's true. That's true. And so back to your book, Rolf, you do emphasize mentoring a lot over managing, right? So you've moved
Yeah.
away from this language of managing people, managing what you're saying mentorship. Can you explain why? Why do you emphasize mentorship?
Well, because it really involves people. I mean, management traditionally has had what I call compliance, but not buy-in. You
Hmm.
get to people willing to go along.
Yeah,
However, they're not committed enough to do something with their own initiative, which
yeah,
means you're constantly having to manage them more closely because you're too afraid or they're not performing the way you wanted them to, and therefore it becomes worse and worse and worse.
yeah,
Mentoring basically is saying, what can we grow? How at whatever stage you're at? I mean, not all mentoring is the same, and that's part of the reason why I've got these 7 categories is to
yeah.
customize the mentoring to where people are at the moment.
Hmm.
So if you've got somebody who might be new, although it isn't only new people, who are in a what I call a pondering stage, they're trying
Yeah,
to figure out how do I fit in, what do I do, whatever thing.
yeah.
Just because they're new doesn't mean that we made a bad hiring decision, let's get rid of them. You
Mhm.
nurture them. That's a particular approach I take, and the techniques involved, the strategies, the tactics. Really, it's very practical, very
Yeah,
hands-on type of learning,
yeah,
and it gives the people a chance to realize we can mentor each other and support each other through whatever stage we're at within the organization. And sometimes these stages ebb and flow.
yeah.
Even somebody who might be a good performer slips back in some areas due to confidence or family issues, whatever, and they
Mhm.
need more support in a different way.
Yeah. And does mentorship come naturally to leaders?
I think it can. It requires some training. I won't deny
Okay.
that to
Yeah.
do it effectively, and that's part of what the book and my course is. My course is intense. I won't deny that. In
Okay.
fact, but the course I have supporting my book is not the same as the book. It's new material, new content, and so they can take it much further. But
Okay.
there's 15 modules in there, 75 lessons. There's a lot to learn
Wow.
if you really want to do it well.
Wow.
However, you can always start small and just start even with just reading a $7 book.
Yeah. So your book is titled Risk Giving Leadership, Equipping Employees to Transform Toxic Workplaces. There are so many leadership books out there. What makes this different from the others that we see out there?
Well, I think the difference is that so many of them become top-down refinements,
Hmm.
kind of the same old thing.
Hmm.
And they also are targeting people who have traditionally been in leadership roles as previously defined.
Okay.
I'm defining it differently. I'm
Yeah.
saying leadership is an approach. It's not a title.
Mm-hmm.
And so, therefore, if you can help people that are broader based within any organization, even small company, if you can
Yeah.
help people feel like they are part of the success, of the growth, as well as in effect buying into the commitment to it, the perseverance, the dedication,
Mhm.
you'll get far better results.
So the key then is it, and would I be safe to assume that the key then is centering less on the leader and more on the folks that you're working with, that you're co-leading with, that you're more, because I mean when I look up in the marketplace there, I see a lot of ego-driven, egocentric leaders that are driven by, oh, I did this, I did this, I did this, I did this, I did this. So you're really just saying that as a leader, the key to mentorship is actually thinking of yourself less and then putting others forward.
Yeah, it is. And at the same time, I think that it's a semantic thing. I don't mean to get bogged down in, but the idea of leaders is not a hierarchical title.
Okay.
The idea is leaders is a mental approach to whatever job you have.
Yeah.
In other words, if you're mentoring somebody who just needs a little guidance, you're a leader.
Yeah.
If you yourself want to be mentored by somebody else as a mentee, that's a type of leadership also, saying, I'm not ready for that, or I need guidance, or I need some help. I'm asking for help. The best leaders are willing to ask for help. You know that.
Yeah.
And a lot of them don't. Their egos get in the way.
True.
So let people realize that they don't have to take it on themselves. They don't have to. This is what my wife Karen does a lot with her work in the childcare industry is you don't have to be alone feeling isolated.
Yeah.
Share it. Have a collaboratory.
Yeah. And again, so as a leader, what's the best place for me to start? I'm listening to this. I love risk-giving leadership. Where do I start?
Well, that's kind of a teed up here. I go to my website. In fact, I've got a book bundle where you can buy the book through the website for the same price as you'd pay at Amazon or some bookstores, and you get extra resources in there in addition to the book. So it's a little bundle. I don't mean it as self-serving. Yes, it is a type of approach that's different. I won't deny that. And yes, the subtlety of learning the finesse involved is the key. It's not just coming in with a big broad brush and assuming there's one size fits all, one fix.
Yeah.
It takes some ability to realize, okay, where are people? What stage are they at around me? How are they flexing and adjusting? Are they going forward? Are they going stepping back a little bit? Because it's not always a straight line for everybody. And how can I help them? How can I guide and serve others, including my peers?
I love that. How can I guide and serve others, including my peers? And then sort of, looking out, perhaps it could be the risk-giving leadership framework and then sort of diving a little bit more into it. And so, Rolf, one of the things that I was wondering too over the weekend, even as I was preparing for our conversation, is this notion, COVID, gave us a whole new way of doing things, right? So all of a sudden, there was the ability to work remotely and then also work in person. So how does risk-giving leadership evolve for this sort of remote and hybrid kind of team working? So is it something that's compatible, or maybe it's just for in person?
Oh no, it's very compatible to all these situations. When you think about it, it's even more necessary and beneficial when you're working remotely. Yeah. Because what's happening is we're getting bombarded with Zoom meetings, one after another, et cetera. So when I coach executives or anybody, I talk about the idea, how are those meetings affecting your energy?
Yeah.
How's it affecting your preparation for each meeting? They're going from one to the next. And they admit that the first 5 or 10 meetings of every meeting seems to be wasted by people trying to get their head around whatever this latest issue is. So even subtle little things, I give a very practical technique. I say, okay, what if you scheduled a meeting for 55 minutes instead of 60 minutes? What if you took that 5-minute breaks? You did some meditation, some breathing exercise, some what I call breath scaling, get your energy back up again. When you prepare for that meeting, you go in there and you're starting every meeting more productively. You get the whole 55 minutes productive as opposed to what was 50 minutes out of 60 that might have been partially productive. So little things. So even the long distance idea of preparing yourself for how to get the best out of yourself and others around you, that's a form of service as well.
That's fantastic. And so, again, just sort of another question that I had, a future-facing question is, as we come to the end of our conversation here, what's one risk that you think more leaders should be giving to their teams right now?
One risk they should give their teams right now, I think the biggest risk is humility.
Okay.
Being willing to be vulnerable.
Wow.
No matter what your position is, if you can share with others some empathy, some ability to realize, okay, we're all in this together. We're vulnerable. Yes, it's okay. We're going to learn from our mistakes together. And we're not going to blame and point fingers of blame at other people. We're going to say, okay, if things aren't going well, let's figure out together what's making a difference. That, for some executives and others, their ego gets in the way until you remind them about the idea that, do you really want the burden all on your own shoulders? And how much are you taking it home every night? And they start saying, I don't want that anymore. Then try this approach instead.
Wow, that's fantastic. Thank you so much, Rolf. Rolf, I usually don't let my guests go without answering 3 questions. So if you've listened to any of my podcasts, you would hear this. So, um, can you tell us and share with us if you were to have dinner with 3 people, living or dead, who would they be and why?
Well, I'm going to guess that my answers are a little more esoteric than you might get from others, right?
Please come on.
I'm going to go all the way back. I'm going to start with Enoch.
Enoch.
Way back there, right? I'd
Wow.
love to sit down and find out, was he really involved with space travel? Did he understand and get perspective on timetable, celestial movements, how time was working?
Mhm.
It doesn't matter whether it's proven or not. I'll still learn something.
Yeah.
Another one related to that, actually, I'd like to learn much more about I do a lot of work in India. I've been doing that for decades and everything. So the Vedas, there's probably the Hindu sage, Bharadvaja is one who's written a lot about the Vedas. And I'd love to learn about the Vimana, whatever they call it, basically what they've reported spacecraft
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
what's involved with that. I'd also like to learn about from him or others who are even earlier writers, the Lagima force that
Okay.
supposedly we can use to levitate. I'm
Oh,
very
yeah.
interested in that kind of stuff. I do meditation. I'd love to be able to do physical levitation. I'm very spiritual, however, the physical is always hard to get me off the ground. And I guess the third one would be a little more recent. I would love to go talk. It's similar in the sense I'd love to talk with Admiral Byrd.
Uh-huh.
Probably around 1927 or so, because it's reported around 1926 he might have gone and visited Hollow Earth here, Agartha, and then maybe again he went back and a few years later. I'd love to have that in-between stage. What did you learn? What would you want to do next? And just see what's happened. Again,
Yeah.
you can't prove any of these things from the
That's
physical realm. In the spiritual realm, we can prove it, but I still would learn something.
yeah. Wow, wow, wow. I mean, those are interesting conversations that you would have there. Rolf Foster-Jorgensen, thank you so much for joining me on this podcast and for our conversation and for these interesting, sort of leadership practices that you bring. The risk-giving leadership, equipping employees to transforming toxic workplaces book is available on Amazon, is available from your website. We'll put that in
Yep.
the show notes. And thank you for all you do. Thank you for your decades-long service to growing leaders, to nurturing leaders, to ensure that we have a world that is, respectful, is kind, and is able to serve humanity. Thank you so much.
Well, that praise goes back to you as well, my friend. The wonderful work you're doing, the writing and the coaching and the guidance you have all over the world is admirable, and we appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. My listeners, I've been speaking with Rolf Foster-Jorgensen, an inspired leader, consultant, facilitator who has had decades of experience. And so thank you so much for joining us on Voices Less Said with Dr. P-Man.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Voices Less Said podcast with Dr. P-Mac. I hope you enjoyed insights that came out of this conversation. Keep your notifications on. Our next episode will be dropping soon. Thank you and enjoy.